He knew how criminals thought because he was one. Up to now in this series, the real Sherlocks have been professionals, surgeons, scientists, men trained to observe and analyse and prove. But Sherlock Holmes doesn't just stand at a distance. He infiltrates, he disguises himself, he moves through criminal spaces without being detected, and that part of Holmes, the part that understands criminals from the inside, that didn't come from a university. It came from the underworld. Let me just interrupt you for a second and be honest with you. If you can't remember what you're learning here a week from now, insight doesn't matter. Intelligence without retention is noise. MindForge is a 30-day program designed to train memory as a functional skill, so information stays available when you need it. If you want Sherlock-level thinking to be usable rather than impressive, that's the foundation. omniscient-insights.com/MindForge, or here, 30 days, £30, that's £1 a day to change your life. Because the next real Sherlock didn't study crime, he lived it. His name was Eugène François Vidocq. Now, Vidocq escaped prison multiple times. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. He knew how criminals thought because he was one. And then in a move that would still be controversial today, he crossed over. He began working for the police, not as a uniformed officer, not as an outsider, but as a man who could walk into criminal circles, blend in, and gather intelligence, and walk back out with names and methods and plans. He introduced something radically new to law enforcement: undercover work as a formal investigative method. And without Vidocq, Sherlock Holmes never becomes a master of disguise. Eugène Vidocq was born into instability. By his early childhood, he was already deeply embedded in criminal life: theft, fraud, false identities, prison time. But what set him apart wasn't morality, it was intelligence and adaptability. Vidocq learnt how criminals recognized each other, how trust was signaled, how suspicion moved through a room. And when he eventually began working with French authorities, he brought something unprecedented with him: an internal map of criminal behaviour. Vidocq went on to found what would become the first modern detective bureau, the Surveillance. This wasn't policing by patrol, it was intelligence-led infiltration. Now, Vidocq's influence doesn't move directly to Doyle. It moves almost sideways first. Vidocq wrote memoirs describing his criminal life and his investigative work. These memoirs influenced Edgar Allan Poe, who then created the character C. Auguste Dupin, literature's first true fictional detective. And Dupin is the bridge, because Conan Doyle later acknowledges Poe as a key influence on Sherlock Holmes. So Vidocq sits at the root of the lineage, not as a gentleman observer, but as the man who proved that understanding crime requires a proximity to it. When Holmes disguises himself as a beggar, or a sailor, or a worker, that's very much Vidocq's world. His defining skill wasn't deception, it was an adaptive identity. He understood something that still trips people up today. Criminal spaces don't respond to authority. They respond to belonging. Vidocq knew how to adjust his posture and his gait to match. Modify his speech patterns and any slang that was needed to mirror behavioural norms and suppress any outsider tells. He didn't just play a role. he became contextually appropriate, which is crucial when you think about it. Bad undercover work is acting. It's a performance. Good undercover work is behavioral congruence. Sherlock Holmes demonstrates this repeatedly, disappearing into London because he knows how to become invisible. That's not magic. It's Vidocq. He wasn't just psychological, he was practical and disciplined. He pioneered plaster casting of footprints, early ballistic matching, criminal record systems, intelligent networks built on informants. Those aren't academic ideas. They are tools that are very much born from necessity. Vidocq understood that criminals repeat patterns and that systems beat any intuition that you've got. Sherlock Holmes' obsession with trace evidence doesn't come only from science. It comes from Vidocq's insistence that behaviour leaves residue. Vidocq's lesson for modern roles is uncomfortable, but unsurprisingly essential. Lesson 1 being you can't analyse a system you don't understand from the inside. Whether it's criminal networks or corporate cultures or hostile groups, distance distorts understanding. You've ever had a customer-facing role where the management who sits in an office all day tries to deliver some new method when they've been away from that facing department for God knows how many years? It's going to fail. Vidocq reminds us that proximity will reveal rules that outsiders never see. Lesson 2. Blending is not deception. It is survival. Effective operators don't stand out. They don't signal authority. They move in rhythm with the environment. And lesson 3. Behaviour is contextual, not personal. Vidocq understood that people behave differently depending on the role the environment allows. Now, this aligns perfectly with modern behavioural science, and it contradicts these lazy, trait-based thinkers. Vidocq escaped prison so many times that authorities, they eventually stopped being surprised. And when he later worked with the police, many officers didn't trust him, unsurprisingly, because they couldn't tell when he was one of them, which is exactly why it was so effective. The man who pioneered undercover policing never fully belonged to either side. So if Bell taught Sherlock Holmes how to see, Littlejohn teaches him how to prove. Vidocq taught him how to move, how to disappear into systems, how to gather intelligence without being noticed, how to understand crime as a lived experience and not abstract theory. And that's why Holmes isn't just a thinker, he's an operator. Next in the series, we return to science triumphantly, but at a new level. Because the next real Sherlock didn't just observe or infiltrate. He proved that every contact leaves a trace. And that idea still underpins modern forensic thinking today.